Hi guys, this is Leela. Welcome to my channel Leela WebDev. So we are working on this travel app, right? So let's try to keep this travel app aside, and I want to explain you another important concept in the React, that is nothing but context API. So what is the use of this context API? So there are different ways how we can manage the states, right? So like use state we can use it, and use reducer we have used it, and like that we have used it different ways. This context API is also one way of maintaining the state. So where exactly this context API will be useful is, for example, let's say that here I am having the paint, I am opening the paint. So let's say that here we are having a component, and this component will be having two components, let's say, okay, and this one will be having another components like this, and this one has another component, and this one also has three components like this. So these are like this parent components, and here we will be having another component, and in this one we will be having component. Now let's assume, okay, so we have a state that is nothing but a is equal to 2. Let's assume, so this is the state variable and defined using the use state. So we are having a is equal to, and this data a is equal to should be used by both this component and also this component. Let's assume, so that means the state variable a should be used by these two child components. Now what we need to do, so here whenever we update state here, that should be reflected in this component also, and whenever we update there anything, means this should be updated here also. So that means these two components should be in sync with this variable. So what is the normal scenario, what we will try to do? So we will try to check what is the common ancestor for these two components. The common ancestor for these two components is, if you go here, this is not the common parent, and this is not the common parent, and here this is the common parent. So now we will try to maintain this state here in this one. So we will declare here a is equal to 2 as a use state variable, and now we will send this as a props to this component, and here also you will send this as a props to this component, and the update function and all those things also you will send it as a props. So for sending as a props to this deeper level child, so what we need to do here, we need to send it to here and as a props, and this component doesn't use this one, and here we need to send it to this prop, and this component also doesn't have anything, just it will bypass the props to the deeper level. So here this will pass as a props here, and it has passed here. In the same scenario, this is passed into this one, and here like this, and here like this, and here like this. So like this we are sending it as a props. Now the problem here, what you will be able to observe carefully is the context API, it's not the context API, sorry, the state variable, whichever we are trying to use it, a is equal to 2, we are sending that as a props to the inner level of components, and the components which are not, the props which are not useful also, we are trying to send it. So this is not an ideal scenario. So this is normally called as an props drilling. Okay, this is called as an props drilling. So why? Because we are trying to send the props to the inner level, so which in the intermediate props, intermediate component doesn't have any usage of this props. So now in order to overcome this scenario, so what is the problem for this one is, maintenance of the application will become tedious for us. Why? Because we are sending the props like that. So tomorrow managing of the props or managing of the state will become tedious for us. So that is the reason. In order to overcome this one, so the new concept has been introduced, that is nothing but a context API. So what is the use of this context API and how we can use this context API, I will try to show you. So by using this context API, now let's assume that let's remove this all the things. So now you understood about the problem, right? The traditional way how we can send the variable or anything state variable to the inner component means this is the way, by sending it as a props only. That means props drilling, we will try to do is send it to the props, and that props will send, that component will send the props to another component, and that component will send the props to another component. So like that, until and unless until we reach the target component, we will be sending that props like that only. So this is called as, normally this scenario is called as props drilling. So now when you come to another scenario, like let's say that, so here we are having another component, let's say I will this is the another component, and here we will be having another component. Okay, I will draw small diagram only, and like this we are having a components like a tree structure. Now what I want to tell, so here I already told you, right, here we are having an a is equal to 2, and when we try to send this data to component whichever is this one is using, and here this one is using, and we need to send it as a props, right? So this is the common scenario. That is a traditional way. Instead of that one, so here the variable will be declared here, okay, and whoever wants to utilize this one directly, that component can use this one using the context, okay, and here directly it can use in intermediate. So for example, let's say that the variable should be used by this component, means automatically it can use it through the context. If that variable is declared in the context, so then we can use the directly the components which are having the child, they can use it. But you need to understand that you need to provide that context. So that means this component should be in the context provider. If it is outside the context provider, means then the state variables and all those things cannot be useful. So this is where we will be achieving this one. So now if you try to search in the internet or anything context API, I will try to show you. So if you open any website here in our Google, like context API React, if you try to search, you can open W3 School. So many articles will be there which they will be explaining you about the context. So normally the definition for this one is React context is a way to manage the state globally. So this is the main thing. So the state will be maintained globally, so that any component, whoever wants to use that state, they can directly utilize that state without, there is no need to pass the props to that component. So without being passed to the component, so directly we can manage the state. It can be used together with the useState hook to share state between deeply nested components more easily than with the useState alone. So than with the useState, we can use the data, so we can pass the data to the deeply nested components more easily. Previously we used to send it as a props drilling, but here we can also. So here you will be able to see, to do this without a context, you need to pass the state as a props through each nested component. This is called as an props drilling. So I told you about this prop drilling, right? I have shown you with an example, not example. So I have shown you with the diagram also. So how the without context, how we will be sending that state data to the deeper components with using the prop drilling. So by sending the props to one component to other component, like that we will be sending that concept is called as a prop drilling. So here they have given a simple example. So if you want, you can check it. But otherwise, I will explain you in the next video with a simple example. So how we can create the context is, so the normally we will be using the create context. So this is the create context. It should be imported from the React, and we will be creating the context, and whatever the data is all required, so we will be using it. And here we will be using some special cases like user context or provider. I will explain you these all things. And we will be using the use context hook in order to utilize the data that is available in the context data. If in order to utilize that one, we will be using the use context hook, and that one is also imported from the React. So these are the things. So create context and create context and use context is the keywords which we will be using more often in this one. So in the next video, what I will try to do is I will try to implement a simple counter example so that you will be able to understand very easily about the context API. So this is the brief introduction about the context API. If you want to know more details about this one, so you can search in the Google and you can find the examples for this one all. So it's not a matter, so you'll be able to understand it. So in the next video, we'll try to see with a simple example so that you will be having a clear understanding about this one. So that's it guys about this one. If you have any doubts or any suggestions, please post the comments below to this video. And if you like this video, please do support me by subscribing to my channel. Thank you.